Welcome to the NBA 2K G League show. I am your host, Varun Chari, and welcome to the show. So on today's episode, we are going to talk about Jamarion Sharp of the Texas Legends, and should the Lakers trade for Jamarion Sharp? Now, first of all, what is the biggest issue kind of going on right now at the Lakers, right? So we know about the Mark Williams trade falling through. We know that the Lakers needed a center at the trade deadline and that they weren't able to get it. So what were their options at this point? Well, we know they signed Alex Len. They have Trey Jemison and Christian Koloko on two-way contracts. And of course, they have Jackson Hayes as well as their starting center. But what about down the line? Do they see Trey Jemison and Koloko as center options moving forward? I want to talk about a player named Jamarion Sharp. And he's really interesting because he is 7'5". Yeah, I know, 7'5". Like, I think he moves pretty well comparably to guys like, versus like Taco Fall or, Sim Bular. I don't think he's as fast as maybe Victor Wembanyama, but he definitely moves well for his size. And he's somebody that I think the Lakers should bring in potentially to develop. And, he could be a Lakers center with Luka down the line. Now, let's talk a little bit about Jamarion Sharp. So he's a 7'5" center out of Ole Miss. He's actually a JUCO center and then transferred to a D1 school, I believe it was Western Kentucky, and then played at Ole Miss his last year of college. And so at Ole Miss, he was averaging 2.4 blocks a game and only 15.8 minutes per game. So imagine, say he played like 36 a game, right? That's almost 5 blocks. Obviously, the defense is there. Offensively, I don't think, he has much of his game outside of it, but defensively, he has the potential to be a really good option for the Lakers if they made a trade for him. I did some, scouting work. I kind of broke some things down in terms of watching a recent game. I looked at some of his games with the Texas Legends. I really did look at his strengths, his weaknesses, and I think the Texas Legends probably aren't the best fit for Sharp in terms of his development. I always thought about this when Texas was putting their roster together. I kind of felt like they were going to need a point guard, kind of like, like a Chris Paul with Wemby, a similar situation, because Jamarion's 7'5", guys. And sometimes I feel like he doesn't play as much to the size that he can, and I think he will learn that over time. But I believe that if he played with a point guard who really does throw it up to him and really can get it to him, I think he does have the potential to be a good player in this league. I think that aspect was going to be really important for the Texas Legends. I just don't think they really had that this year. Maybe they can. I mean, they are one of the worst teams in assists actually in the G League. I think they're 27 or 26 out of like 31 teams when it comes to assists. So already, I think watching even the team, I can notice it's a lot more, of their guards are more scorers rather than, setting up plays. And so I think that's one thing. Jamarion's best game was actually against the Stockton Kings, and a lot of his 16 points in that game happened because of pick and roll. So that is something I would like to see more, if he's not with Texas, but with a different NBA team, him being utilized more as a pick and roll type of player. Some other, strengths and weaknesses, obviously, he moves well, which is a big strength, for somebody his size. But I think a weakness is just working on his, positioning, his rebounding. He does get around 7 rebounds a game in the G League. And if that were to translate to the NBA with the amount of minutes he's playing, which is about 22 minutes a night in the G League, that could probably go to like 5 rebounds. So realistically, if he plays like 30 minutes a night in the NBA, he could be averaging maybe 6 to 7 rebounds with an NBA team. But one big thing is that because of his size, I think he also is learning the game. He has talked about this in an interview that, the pacing was one challenge that he had to kind of get used to with the NBA versus college, coming from summer league and then preseason to G League. So that is one thing I think he is getting to learn more about, process of transitioning from college to the pros. But I think that's also, he's working on his conditioning, right? So, but I also think his perimeter defense is also one important thing, because a lot of times guys will just shoot over him if he's on the perimeter, which typically isn't ideal anyway for a center to be on the perimeter like that. They'll know they'll exploit it, which is a lot of what teams have done. So, but hopefully if he can kind of just work on his pick and roll type of game, really learn to roll and get the alley-oops and put him down, I think that's gonna be huge. He can really block shots, and he just has to get stronger. Now, even though he's 7'5", he's 235 pounds, so definitely does need to put on about like 20 pounds, I'd say, to really become a good center. He could be like a Mitchell Robinson type of player in this league. Now, how does he fit with Luka? Well, I think the obvious thing with Luka is that he told Rob Pelinka he wants to play with centers who are alley-oop type of guys who he can lob threats, right? So Jamarion can be that type of player, I think. And if he does end up with the Lakers somehow down the line, remember, Jamarion was with Dallas, which obviously we know Luka was with Dallas, right? And similar to Lively and similar to Gafford, these are guys who are lob threats. I wonder if Dallas had brought in Sharp to kind of be like a third string center for them in case of any type of center injuries that were to happen. And we are kind of seeing that Lively's hurt, Gafford's hurt. But what's interesting is Kyler Kelly actually got called up from the South Bay Lakers, funny enough. But they went with a guy like Kyler Kelly, who's more experienced, who's been playing in the G League and overseas longer than Jamarion Sharp. So, I wonder if the Mavs would really consider bringing Sharp in the future. And who knows? Maybe he is an option. Maybe they'll cut Kelly, they'll bring in Sharp. But if you're South Bay, do you consider trading for him? So, some interesting things looking at South Bay's draft picks. They have traded away some of their picks to build their roster for this year, but they do actually have a pick from the Rip City remix that they acquired last year in the Demois Hodge trade. So that could be an option. But the interesting thing about this situation is that Texas owns South Bay's pick for next year's G League draft. If you were the worst team, you get the number 1 pick. If you're the second worst team, you get the number 2 pick. So South Bay is one of the worst teams right now in the G League. Texas does have an incentive for wanting them to lose, because clearly that if they give the Lakers a center that they want, then they're really helping them, because then they're potentially losing a higher draft pick, and that can become a tradable asset, or who could help your team and maybe eventually the Mavericks. So that is something that I think is quite interesting about the situation. Would the Mavs really want to give up Sharp with this organization, with all the injuries going on? Would they bring him back next season? I think if the Lakers truly wanted to get his returning rights, say for next season, they'd obviously talk to his agent, talk to him, maybe try to bring him on the summer league team and just kind of see if he's a good fit. And if it is, then maybe they do consider trading for his returning rights. Obviously they'll have to give maybe the returning rights of a different player, or they'll have to make a 3 or 4 team trade, which is more likely going to be during the summer rather than in season, to get his returning rights. But if they just trade a player's returning rights who's not coming back overseas, they will probably have to give away some type of draft pick. So South Bay has to also be really careful about what they do with their picks, because they are limited already with losing their draft pick for this year. But I do think if he can develop to be a good lob threat for Luka, if he can block shots, if he can get stronger, continue to work on his rebounding position, and I think a lot of it has to do with strength, he can be a really good player in this league. So I think that's it for this video. But what do you think? Do you think the Lakers should consider him, as a potential project type of center for the future? Let me know in the comments down below. But if you watch this video, feel free to subscribe, like, or dislike, because hey, you do you. So this is the NBA 2K G League show. I'm your host, Varun Chara, and have a great weekend.